Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Addict 3.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto's parents ex Minato and ex Kushina came back to life part 2? And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The ramen was the best as usual but the company was even better in the whole ordeal, the small curtain almost making it a homey kind of feel for the young boy. Naruto walked down the streets ignoring the villagers as they glared and made snide comments like they always did. He patted his fully belly and he thought as what to do now that he had free time. The thought of going to the one of the training grounds that he knew was no longer in use by anyone anymore, so no ninjas would come and kick him out. Nodding to himself he ran home to get his tools for practice, then ran to the training ground, only to hear a grinding noises and some on-cursing then a tree falling. Naruto hid behind the trees closest to him and peered out to see a white-haired man making a blue ball in his hand and ram it into a tree which got a spiral-shaped cut in its base almost cutting all the way through the trunk. Naruto couldn't help but gasp in awe at the jutsu. What he didn't expect was a kuni to come flying at him. Naruto fell on his rear and squeaked as a second later the white-haired man was standing in front of him, the same blue ball in his reared back hand. Naruto got a good look at the guy now. He had Geta on his feet and his mesh armor that may be a full body version on by the fact it was also seen on his arms. A green pair of GI pants and shirt that were tapered after the knee and elbow, a red vest that was longer going past his butt when he stood, with a yellow circle on each shoulder. Naruto could see a large scroll like the ones in Hokage Gigi's office on his back. On his forehead was a headband with a kanji on it, though Naruto didn't know what it said. On the man's face was 2 red lines running from the corners of his eyes were the color of coal, and a mole on his nose. The man's expression was one of surprise once he saw him, and once the man collected himself he plopped down on his butt and rubbed his face. Naruto forgot about his near death and was excited again, so he got up on his knees and put both of his hands on the old man's legs, making the man look up, as he leaned towards the old man's face. "You so have to teach me that awesome jutsu. It was powerful, and if I had that I can become Hokage and protect everyone and then they will respect me and stop looking down on me, Dadbayo," Naruto said loudly, getting closer to Jiraiya's face with a large smile on his face that was a perfect copy of Kushina's smile. Jiraiya blinked and then laughed at the ridicule situation he was in. He had come here to blow off some steam, and just this one act by this little boy did more to calm him than him pounding a tree into kindle. It seemed he has his mother's talent to ease tense situations with something so simple and unintentional. He grabbed the boy in a hug and held him for a few minutes, running his hand over the soft blonde spiky hair. "Thanks kid, I needed the laugh. I was having a bad day until now," said Jiraiya, who then let the boy go. As he let him go he frowned. The boy looked like he wanted to stay, so he sat Naruto sideways in his lap while they talked. Also, that verbal tick of Kushina's was just shown to be hereditary. Poor kid. "Sorry about scaring you like that, kiddo, but what are you doing out here?" Jiraiya asked, looking down at the boy who leaned into him. It was sad and scary that he wanted attention so much that a complete stranger was a welcome thing. Though once Minato and Kushina got back he would have to have the stranger danger talk with the kid, and his parents needed to know of this so they could keep an eye on him. "I was coming out here to train. I'm in my first year of the academy. But I'm not that good yet," Naruto said, then leaned back a bit to enjoy the closeness and warmth. Jiraiya noticed the need for a companionship and decided to see if there was something he could do to make the kid feel welcome, to have him as a training buddy and comfort. "Well, I'm Jiraiya of the Sennin and I saw you in the Sarutobi sensei's office today, remember? Now what was your name, kiddo? Maybe I can help you out a bit with your ninja skills. After all, I trained the Yondaime Hokage." Jiraiya boosted, hoping that the kid would take the bait and allow him to hang out and get to know his grandson. Though the kid wouldn't be told that until Minato said it was okay, since Jiraiya wasn't sure if they had a plan or not. Jiraiya hoped the kid liked the Hokages enough to want his help. "What? You taught the Yondaime Hokage? He's my hero. yelled the little ball of energy in his lap, almost breaking his nose with a hand flying up in his cheer, along with almost being kneed in the nuts when the boy turned around and kneeled in his lap. This kid could be a cuddle danger if this happened often, though it would all be worth it if the kid was this happy all the time. Oh, and my name is Uzumaki Naruto, the next Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves. I'll be the best one ever. Naruto said, jumping off Jiraiya's lap and hitting him in the nuts, this time making the man cringe and slightly fold over. It was only due to it being a lot lighter than most he has ever received that caused him not to crumble. Jiraiya smirked. He couldn't wait to tell Minato who the boy's hero was. Minato would laugh. Ah, I know that name. It's the very name of the hero in my book I wrote years ago. It's called Tales of a Gutsy Ninja. You want my copy to read? Jiraiya asked when the boy suddenly stopped and looked away. Jiraiya wasn't sure what to think of this. In just a few minutes of being around the kid, he knew this wasn't normal for Naruto and it worried him. Hey kid, what's wrong? Don't you want to read a book with a character that has your name as a hero? Jiraiya asked, pulling the kid back into his lap, trying to get the kid to look at him. Naruto mumbled something, and when asked to repeat it louder, the kid sighed. I would love to read it, but I can't read, said Naruto sadly, looking away and laying his head on Jiraiya's chest. It's not that I don't want to, but no one ever showed me how to, and I didn't know you had to read and write until everyone in school was doing it. When I opened my books in class, one couldn't follow when the teacher read the books. The same word wouldn't match up with the same letters of the same word that the teacher must have said. I counted and underlined the word like the, since I heard it so much, but it never was the same symbols. I tried, really, I did, but when I looked at another kid's book, they had something completely different. I figured out later that the teachers did something to my books like everyone else that doesn't like me has done with other things. When I tried swapping out the books, I was sent to the headmaster and paddled for trying to steal. I'm not dumb like everyone else says I am, really, I'm not. But I'm not gonna let them get me down. I'll learn and surpass them in no time. Naruto ranted, getting frustrated and upset at the position he was in. Jiraiya's heart went out to the kid. He'd have to start fixing this now, and he knew just how he was gonna do it too. Naruto really did live up to his name of a ninja that never gives up. Hopefully Minato wouldn't be jealous for him stealing this learning experience from him. Tell you what, Naruto, your training for today will be me and you learning to read, and it will be the book I told you about. I'll go slowly and let you read a few lines and help you sound out words as we go along. I'll even explain the letters and sound and spelling rules, Jiraiya said, standing with Naruto in his arms and walking to a tree to sit under the shade. Once they were there, Jiraiya sat and positioned Naruto in a comfy spot in his lap, then pulled the book out of a seal in his vest. He started slowly letting Naruto see the words he read as he moved his figure under the word and sounding it out as he read it. When there was short sentence he would have Naruto try reading the same passage and helped out a bit, but mostly let Naruto try it on his own. The kid was smart, like he said, and was slowly getting the hang of the words and how they should be pronounced. After 5 chapters the kid was reading more on his own, but it was very slow still, and sometimes Jiraiya would explain what a word meant when asked. Naruto kept at it even when Jiraiya could see he was frustrated. Sometimes Jiraiya would try and take over, but Naruto would butt in and keep trying on his own. It was already very late by the time the 4th chapter was finished, and it was hard to read what was on the paper, and Jiraiya could hear the kid's stomach rumbling, but the kid wanted to keep going. Look kid, tell you what, let's go eat and then we can go to your home and read where you can see the words. How does that sound? Jiraiya asked, looking down at the boy as he pulled out a toad bookmark. It was a laminated plastic with a picture of one of his summons, a messenger toad, dancing in a string tied through the hole punch at the top and a small toad painted bead on the string. The boy snatched the bookmark out of his hand and looked at it with wide eyes, then stood up and pulled out a heavy-looking toad wallet. You like toads too? That's so cool. Where can I get a bookmark like this one? Are there more things like this with toads? I have a set of toad pajamas Gigi got me, do you? Asked Naruto as Jiraiya took the bookmark back, placing it in the book, then storing the book back in his vest. He laughed and informed the boy that his publisher had made it for him and told him about seeing if more could be made and that Naruto would receive a few when he got them. Naruto was doing a funny jig with this toad wallet in happiness. While Jiraiya got up, he took out his spy camera and snapped a few photos to show off later with the tail for the kids' parents, that is if they aren't watching it through his sensei's crystal he saw earlier. How about a light jog to the restaurant I have in mind? I'm buying, so put that wallet away and let's stretch our legs. Jiraiya said with a smirk as he received a nod from the kid that complied, then followed the light pace. After a few moments, Jiraiya picked up his pace and continued this to see the kid's speed and endurance as he headed to the restaurant. Naruto kept up just fine, so the stories of him giving Chunin the runaround wasn't exaggerated. He was fast just like his dad. Funny enough, the kid said he was at this restaurant yesterday with the nurse from school and Inu, who was standing guard, but didn't eat. Jiraiya wanted to meet this nurse, for more than one reason, so he could thank her for caring for his grandson. He noticed that Naruto was thin when he was holding him earlier. Another thing was the boy would rub into him in a snuggle gesture and would lay his head over Jiraiya's hard ear pressed there to listen, so comfort was defiantly very lacking for the kid too. It was sad and made Jiraiya feel guilty about not being able to be here, but with investigating Orochimaru and other countries to make sure no one was gonna come and break down Konoha's gates or send assassins to kill the poor boy. It took 4 years before everything was calm and Jiraiya didn't have to hunt down and eliminate anyone to prevent the boy from having nightmares of people coming after him. Even then, by that time, more work piled up with many different reports of various things, making it impossible to come back and care for the boy. Jiraiya walked in with Naruto tugged to his side and asked the waitress for a table. The waitress hesitated for a moment but led them to a table in the back, away from others, to a section that almost looked closed down for the night. She handed Jiraiya a menu, ignoring Naruto, and told that someone would be with them, then left. Jiraiya was angry, but it at least gave him a reason to have Naruto share and learn to read menu formats and learn new words and what they meant. He even gave a small lesson in math with money, which Naruto was fairly well with that due to living alone since he was little. A few minutes of waiting and no one coming over made Jiraiya a bit mad, as he had seen the waitress for this section cleaning and refilling items on the tables around them but not coming to them for their order. Also, she was making sure the grills were taken care of and were off so no accidental fires started. Seemed she was doing anything to not have to come over to them. They were near the kitchen door for the chiefs and waitresses to go through when Akimichi Choza walked out, wiping his hands on a towel, before he looked up and noticed Jiraiya and Naruto sitting at a table of a section that was supposed to be closed. Choza smiled and walked over to the two and bowed to Jiraiya and giving a nod to Naruto. Lord Jiraiya, and I believe this is Naruto, who's in my son's class at the academy. What are you two doing in this section? It's closed, asked Choza, pulling a chair up and sitting. After he asked his question, Naruto bowed his head and said sorry, but to who they didn't know. He started to get up and go when Choza put a gentle hand on his shoulder. Naruto jumped and cringed away from him, making Choza withdraw his hand and frown. Jiraiya noted the motions but saved Naruto by keeping with the conversation in another direction. I guess the waitress at the front must have been mistaken and led us to the wrong area. Do you know if there is somewhere else we can be seated and have our meal? Asked Jiraiya, making Choza frown as he glanced at Naruto. Choza figured that the waitress at the front didn't know what Jiraiya looked like and just treated him this way because of Naruto. This wasn't gonna stand with Choza. He would have a meeting tomorrow and tell them that if anyone treated Naruto like this again, they could go elsewhere and work. This would not happen again. I'm sorry about that. Tell you what, I'll be your server for the night and you can relax here and eat to your heart's content peacefully. What would you like to drink? Asked Choza, looking at the two, and received the order after Jiraiya helped the boy with the menu more. Choza made a small side trip to tell the waitress that was leaving there would be a meeting tomorrow at noon and it was mandatory, and she was to tell all currently on staff the same on her way out to home. Choza got their drinks and brought them back to the table and asked if they had their orders ready yet. Jiraiya told him it would be another minute and hinted at Naruto not being able to read, so he was helling the boy and explaining each one to the boy. Choza even offered to bring a sampler for the kid out of things that were on the menu so he would know what each was. He figured that this kid didn't often get out to eat. he also noticed how thin the kid was, and to an Akamichi that was a major crime to see. Akamichi believed that a child denied food was a crime punishable by death if an adult found a child that was hungry and left them there without food. No innocent child should ever be abused like that. Their philosophy was a large healthy body lead to a grown healthy adult with plenty to give and plenty of strength to protect others. In denying a child food they were harming the clan, along with village once they joined Konoha, and that was inexcusable. He would offer Naruto a chance to come over and eat when he wanted and maybe have Choji and him become friends. It would give his wife someone to fuss over other than their son. Poor Choji was fussed over to the point the boy suffered socially sometimes. The only friend he had was Ino and Shikamaru, which was nice, but they needed more friend than just that. Choza never thought the child the Yondaime sealed the Kyuubi into would ever be any trouble, so he never denied his son the chance to make friends with Naruto. After a bit, Choza had an idea of what to serve the two and went to make many things up for them. He wanted Naruto to have a learning experience on the different types and styles of food that he can have. He would note what Naruto liked and didn't like so he could help him decide when he came back on what to order. Choza made a few sampler platers for appetizers and brought them out for the two, then went back to making several side dishes and cutting the meat for them to grill. He would help Jiraiya with Naruto learning the ins and outs of the grill. As he was finishing the preparations on making the grilled meats, his son, Choji, came in through the back and saw all the food. He inquired if there was a party that come in unplanned when Choza told him about his fellow classmate coming to the restaurant and having not ever tried any of these types of dishes other than just some meats grilled with the nurse the day before, or so he was told per Naruto, and a few veggie dishes he actually liked per Naruto description, like the lumpy yellow things, corn, and the dark purple disc, beets, were good. Choza had two cooks and his son help him carry out the food and set up tray stands so the table had room for the guests to eat without knocking over the dishes. Choza helped young Naruto with the dishes and putting little bits of everything for him to try as Jiraiya set himself up and nodded his thanks to Choza for the help. Choji shyly said hello to the two and went back to the kitchen to get some food too and sit by Naruto, after asking Naruto if it was okay. The two boys talked while they ate and Jiraiya spoke with Choza. Choza asked if Jiraiya knew anything about the academy class being closed, since Choji and the others were sent home early with orders of waiting until the Hokage or academy headmaster to send word when class would be back. Unfortunately, this was the first time Jiraiya heard of this, and that was when Naruto regaled the tale of his Anbu guard, trashing his teacher into the floor. Of course, Choji was a bit calmer about what really happened that he could see, after they went back and forth for a bit between the boys. Jiraiya got the basic idea of what happened, but he would talk to his sensei about the school issue and also either asking why or informing him of Naruto's inability to read and write. Jiraiya was feeling guiltier by the moment, and he has only seen a little bit apparently. His grandson had a lot against him. Maybe he should have Tsunade take a good look at the poor kid, and they may have some words with their sensei depending on what was revealed would tell whether there would be a funeral soon enough. They had been eating and talking for about 20 minutes before Jiraiya looked up and saw Sarutobi sensei heading their way. Choji had finished his small meal and was leaving to go home with a message for his mother that his father might be late coming home, and had just missed the Hokage by moments. The Hokage came and sat at their table with their invite. He greeted all present and answered Choza's question about school. "Ah yes, I had messages sent to the students' homes a bit ago. They will return tomorrow and continue where they left off. I came here to talk to Naruto, though I was not expecting to find you here, Jiraiya. Have you two been together for a while?" asked Sarutobi, helping Naruto put more items on his plate and turning away the offer to share in the meal, though Choza did bring him tea after getting his answer and then left again to work and let them talk. Naruto went oddly quiet, though it could have been due to him being busy eating. Jiraiya was kind of giving Hiruzen a bit of a stick eye, which was odd for his student to do. Hiruzen could see that Jiraiya wanted to speak, so he made an inviting gesture to bring up what Jiraiya had on his mind. He winced as he saw Naruto stuff his face in an uncivil manner and lightly placed his hand on Naruto's arm and started helping him with manners without talking to him, only gestures for the corrections, as he waited get Jiraiya to start talking. Sarutobi-sensei, I have to really wonder at the education system of the schools and orphanages here in the village. I ran into young Naruto-kun here while I was blowing off steam in an unused field and found our conversation enlightening. Did you know one of your first-year Ninja Academy students couldn't read? There was a clatter of silverware and dishes as Naruto nearly choked on his food. Sarutobi patted his back after making sure nothing was stuck in the child's throat. Jiraiya had a new cup of water for him when his cough slowed down. Naruto had tears in his eyes, though it could have been from the nearly choking, he just did, or if it was because of it being pointed out about his inability to read. Naruto-kun, is this true? Can you not read? Asked Sarutobi, who felt like smacking himself upside the head for not checking after being shown those books and seeing how Naruto spelt his last name wrong. Naruto was staring at the table, his shoulders tense and hunched. Sarutobi was able to see him chew his lip, but he nodded his head after a few minutes. Naruto fought his tears of frustration but nodded in shame of not being able to read. He hadn't wanted to bother his Gigi since he had so much to do every day. He was the Hokage after all, so he had to take care of everyone in the village. Sarutobi sat back. He was sad and angry on multiple levels. First, he should have known, what with the books that were pulled out of his desk and all, it made him sad he didn't ask or take notice. Angry because he had paid for a tutor to teach him after he was found in his apartment. He should have known, but reports stated that the teacher went to the apartment for 3 hours a day Monday through Friday. If he wasn't able to read, then the other teacher may not have done what they were paid to do as well. He had a basic reading, writing, and history teacher and a basic math and geography teacher. They were paid for their time, and all Anbu reports said they went into the apartment for the allotted time. Just what were they doing during that time? Minato and Kushina will be even more mad now than before. It was late and Minato and Kushina will be with Tsunade still or asleep, so it could wait until tomorrow. Sarutobi made a gesture and an Anbu appeared beside him. Hiruzen brought out a piece of paper and pen, then wrote down orders quickly and dismissed the Anbu. Naruto was quiet but did look curious about what was going on. Naruto seemed to have calmed down and collected himself since he no longer looked closer to crying, though Sarutobi put his arm around his shoulder and drew him closer in a half hug. Naruto snuggled closer and would grab a bite or two every few moments while it was peaceful and enjoyed the comfort Hiruzen provided. I am sorry to say I had not asked Naruto, after we had found those books in your desk that had pages from the encryption division along with mistyped or large edited pieces of information in them. Even some which only showed the wrong way to do what everything they were teaching in class. Hiruzen turned Naruto's head to him with a soft garland hand under his chin, looking sadly into those worn-down baby blue eyes full of shame. Naruto, I must apologize to you for this and many other things you have had to put up with growing up. I promise though that no matter how busy I may look, you are more than welcome to come to me and even Jiraiya when he's in the village. Sarutobi looks at Jiraiya, who nods, and I'm sure in the future you will find some who will have this same policy for you as well. He says, thinking of Minato when he retakes being Hokage, and even Kushina, no matter what she will being doing. Minato would love to have his family near him when he could, and with Kushina Goana be fill in as secretary until Kushina was able to return to active duty. Naruto would more than likely living in the office soon. Hiruzen, Jiraiya and Naruto spent the next few hours relaxing and dining, all the while chatting about the issues. A plan was formed, and tomorrow Naruto would come to the Hokage's office and test his skills with both the Hokage and Jiraiya, observing as a teacher tested where and what Naruto needed to work on and learn, from basic everyday things to entry academy stuff which Naruto would work on making up since he was never given a fair chance. Hiruzen had an idea as to who he would get, but he must have a sit down with this teacher and fast. The day was running out. It was 9 p.m. now and there was much yet to do. Hiruzen bid both Naruto and Jiraiya goodbye, giving Naruto a hug and another apology for everything. To which Naruto smiled and said everything was okay. He would also introduce Tsunade to Naruto as an approved medic and have her double-check Izumi's diagnosis on Naruto, while getting a full scan versus the partial Izumi got without causing Naruto any undue stress. Naruto hated doctors and hospitals, something about feeling or seeing creepy things. Naruto didn't know how to explain it. He only hoped Tsunade and Jiraiya wouldn't cause a problem with their recent fallout. Hiruzen would inform them of the plan Minato had and help make excuses for them to be involved with Naruto without giving anything away to the kid. It didn't matter what other people said about Naruto. Hiruzen knew Naruto was a very smart kid. He could give the slip to his Anbu, but not for long yet. Chunin were already completely lost when the boy ran, and when he hid they couldn't find him at all. It was funny, and sometimes he deliberately set Naruto on them, though they didn't know this. Naruto would either pull pranks on them because of something they did to him, or Hiruzen would hint annoyance at said ninjas, and Naruto would usually take care of them to help his grandfather figure, when Hiruzen wished he could do something to someone for doing something stupid. Even his old teammates weren't safe from Naruto on this front, and even though he got punished, it was light and most times something that Naruto enjoyed, like spending time in Hiruzen's office. If he felt his Anbu were getting either lazy or complacent, he would have Naruto prank them. Sometimes he felt bad for tricking Naruto into pranking others, but it was fun to see the child's creativity or interesting way his mind worked. Hiruzen chuckled to himself as he went back to his office and making a mental list of things he would need to have done by tonight. He was grateful for the Kage Bunshin for doing all his other paperwork, but one thing that was brought to his attention was that some of the paperwork didn't match up to some of his laws, but when the clone looked there was laws he didn't recall signing off on, or something was reworded and processed. He had some investigating to do, and with the daimyo coming with his counselors and many auditors from what Minato requested due to him seeing stuff off during the beginning of his leadership. Gods above only knew how long this had been going on, and Hiruzen had to wonder how Minato caught it before he did. He really was getting too old and complacent, it seems, and Naruto along with many others paid the price for his complacency. Yes, it really was time to retire and let the younger take over. It seemed by Minato's cryptic explanation earlier about how the roots of the tree were trying to take over, and in more ways than Hiruzen had even expected. He admits now that he has been trying to turn his old teammate from the path of darkness that they didn't want to leave, and to continue trying would be fruitless, it would seem. The damage Danzo has been doing has been worse than what Hiruzen knew about. Minato had found evidence of root in many areas that have actually caused more problems than has helped. There was even evidence that it was gonna come and bite them back in the rear from more than one place. So much to do, but so little time to do it all in. Back with Naruto and Jiraiya. It was maybe another half hour before Naruto was finally done eating and trying out all the samplers he could. Naruto was sitting laid back and rubbing his distended stomach, looking very sleepy but happily so. Jiraiya mentally laughed to himself, thinking about the food bill Minato and Kushina would have until Naruto moved out or was able to help buy groceries with his ninja pay. Maybe when Naruto was a chunin, Kushina ate a lot, as it must be an Uzumaki thing. Jiraiya went to the chief door and peered in, calling for Choza, who was sitting in his office making notes to be sent out to his other employees for tomorrow's meeting. Choza came out and gave him a smaller bill than what it should have been for the size meal they were given. Choza explained the samples were on him, only one adult meal and one child's meal was charged to them, and Choza would have it no other way. Jiraiya would pay the bill and leave a generous tip for Choza. He was told to leave the amount on the table and Choza would be out to clean up in a few minutes. Jiraiya went back to the table to find Naruto even more sleepy than when he last saw him. Naruto barely had his eyes open and was slowly falling into the seat cushion next to him. Jiraiya chuckled and pulled out his wallet and placed his money on the table, then put his wallet away again. He walked over to Naruto and kneeled to get to the young boy easier. Jiraiya put his one arm under Naruto's thighs and one under one arm and behind Naruto's back, then lifted. Naruto startled a bit but settled when Jiraiya got him laying against his shoulder and chest. Standing with the limp weight of a child was easy for Jiraiya compared to having to carry fellow adult ninja off the field. Jiraiya walked out of the restaurant and went to where he knew Naruto was living. After all, his sensei had slipped him a paper and key with Naruto's home address and the temporary living arrangement that was set up for Jiraiya. The trip was quiet. The few people out didn't quite know how to react with Naruto in his arms, so they stayed away from them, for now, which Jiraiya didn't mind at all. He went through the market area to a moderately well-kept housing area and found the street Naruto lived on. The apartment looked like it had seen better days. There was graffiti on walls. Outside was mild, but stepping into the main floor's entryway was another story. Holes in the walls and trash on the floor was everywhere. He could see the doors were not set right in the two apartments on this floor. One should have been the apartment managers and one for any disabled, elderly renters so they would have easy access to their home. Looking at the mail boxes on the wall, he could see that there were 3 floors, this one and 2 more. Naruto lived on the top floor in apartment 3C. It had a balcony for him to enjoy per sensei's note. Jiraiya was to stay in 4C. The note also mentioned that Naruto had the whole building to himself since he moved and others had left. Hiruzen mentioned that he was paying the boy's rent at the moment, from the orphan found, and giving Naruto a strip for food, clothes and such. Hiruzen mentioned that the landlord needed to be investigated for fear that he was asking Naruto to pay more for damages done to the building that the council had agreed to pay for since it was unruly civilians, ninja, doing the damage. Once the daimyo came with his auditors and checking here and everywhere that Naruto went shopping or any money-involved area. Jiraiya went up the 2 floors worth of stairs and arrived at the 3rd floor. This floor was a little better, but not by much. The doors were in their frames correctly and the place had a few spots of fresh paint. Other than that, it wasn't very inviting to be there with the dim lights and hollow feel you got from just standing there in the hallway. More signs of the village's poor treatment of one who should be held as a hero, even as royalty, since Kushina was a princess and his grandmother was considered a princess by the villagers and other ninja. Jiraiya went to Naruto's door and could tell right away that it has been scrubbed multiple times to the point the paint was washed off in some spots. Jiraiya looked around the small apartment, walking to what he presumed was the boy's room. He went to the small single bed and started laying Naruto down. He paused when for a moment, he worried the bed would give way, but then made sure none of his weight was against the bed's side and placed the child down. Naruto muttered and attempted to kick off his sandals but failed. Jiraiya chuckled and lightly grabbed Naruto's small foot and removed the ratty sandal. It seemed to be a bit small on Naruto and getting it off was a bit of a challenge. Then he looked around for the pajamas Naruto told him about. After a bit of searching he found what the bottoms to the outfit. Now came the challenging question: should he do what he would have had he raised Minato and change the boy for sleep, or just tuck him into bed and hope he was comfy? The t-shirt Naruto had on was large and hung off his small frame. This pants looked a bit small though, since they were staining against the button and zipper from what he could see, and Naruto really was thin, so these were really tiny. Jiraiya could see that ribs were starting out too prominently and the top of Naruto's hip bones were just showing, so not the worst Jiraiya has seen in his life, but it wasn't something he wanted to see in a child he should have been responsible for. Jiraiya was new. He should have been here. He should have had someone take over the network years ago, been here for little Naruto, for his grandson. Jiraiya clenched his eyes and fist tightly in guilt. He would make everything he could up to both his son and grandson, even if it killed him. He would help Naruto and make sure Minato will have time for his son, even if that means taking time to fill in as the Hokage's second or advisor or whatever he could get the daimyo to agree to once he gets here. He would speak to Tsunade and make a deal with her as well. He wouldn't deny her time with the family, as she had done to him. He really needed to see her tomorrow, or maybe once he was sure how he would confront her without knocking her teeth in. He of course will make her see to Naruto, and soon maybe even tonight while the kid slept, but first he would hit a few clothes stores and some furniture stores and buy some things while the kid was asleep, but before that, time to take inventory of what Naruto had and or needed. Jiraiya wouldn't let Naruto be uncomfortable no matter how awkward the ordeal. He was family and Jiraiya will be there from now on. He unbuttoned the pants and tried getting them down Naruto's legs, but they were as tight as he thought. Jiraiya lifted Naruto's hips up a bit more and get leverage for getting them off without waking Naruto or accidentally breaking the bed. In the end, He took a kuni out and cut them off after looking at Naruto's toes and confirming that circulation was indeed being cut off by the pants, but not enough to make it impossible to keep walking. Poor kid must have had sore tingly legs this whole time, it's a wonder that he was able to run let alone balance. Jiraiya rubbed down Naruto's legs a bit to help get circulation back into the legs like Tsunade had taught him after the one time his legs were almost frozen and needed circulation back while she healed the client they were with. After a few minutes, he then put the pajamas bottoms on Naruto after comparing the size of the pants he just cut off to the one he was about to put on. The pajamas were 3 sizes bigger than the one the kid had on. He turned and started picking up the clothes on the floor looking at the size and either held them up to the sleeping kid to guess if it would fit only after it passed a quality inspection. Making sure the shirt wasn't unusable or too stretched out, ripped, or so dirty it was not savable. There were many that were so bad that when picked up they stayed in the shape it was in on the floor. Jiraiya cringed and just tossed them right away. The room had bent or broken kuni all over. Jiraiya had found the first one when it almost went through his foot after picking up a pair of pants and it fell out. That got him looking for ninja gear too, like pouches and such to hold and maintain weapons. There were none to be found. Jiraiya found more and more. Most if not all went into the junk trash pile and he started writing a list of stuff to go out and buy. This being a ninja village, he knew that there was stores still open late, but he didn't think any were clothing for kids, weapons yes, but mundane things no. He would have to wake a store owner, which has happened before where a ninja has come home and had to buy something for a child they either found while on a mission or a client that had needs before they left or could not wait until morning to get due to having to rush in order to ensure protection. The store would of course send a message to the Hokage that a ninja had come to the shop. It was protocol, so the owner would be compensated for his or her time, though it was small amount. Thinking of that, he moved into the living room, kitchen area and started cleaning there. Naruto started snoring lightly as Jiraiya worked and added items to the ever-growing list of things needed. He even had to summon out some of his camping gear and to get a small broom out to sweep. Naruto had only rags to clean anything with, and even then, they were barely that. They were falling apart and heavily stained with what must have been what the walls were covered with. Naruto really didn't have much, but once looking in the closet he was attacked by many ramen cups, all the special limited editions by the looks of it. Many were already eaten and stacked together, and a few, very few, were still sealed. Naruto must have kept these aside in order to only eat when absolutely needed by the looks of it, but why save the already eaten ones? For now, Jiraiya figured they held meaning for the kid and he would just restack them and clean the area, but he would make a point to ask later sometime. After cleaning the closet of more not usable rags, he restocked the ramen cups, both used and not used, neatly. Jiraiya was about to head into the kitchen when there was a knock at the door. Jiraiya pulled a kuni out and went to the door. He pulled the door open a bit and then repocketed the kuni after seeing who was at the door. "Tsunade Haim, whatcha doing here?" asked Jiraiya, lowly stepping out and leaving the door ajar behind him. "I was gonna complain about the noise, but I see it's just you. What are you doing here? I thought you had your own apartment in town." Tsunade asked. Apparently, their sensei set them up with living near each other but not tell either of them. Of course, Tsunade didn't know that Jiraiya had sold his apartment and had his stuff in storage at the bank. Since he hasn't been in the area in the village for more than a day or two, Hiruzen would either put him up in the Hokage's manor or even the Sarutobi compound, or more than likely go to a club. Jiraiya explained what he thought about his sensei's probable manipulation in their lives and what happened to his apartment. He then explained whose apartment he was in, and what he had found and was doing. By the end of his tale, Tsunade was looking down, fist clenched and shoulders shaking. Jiraiya backed up. He knew she would be mad. He just hoped that she wouldn't take it out on him. He froze when she grabbed his red overcoat and pulled him toward her. She then surprised him. Instead of punching him and beating him to a pulp, she wrapped her arms around him. "I'm sorry, Jiraiya. I'm sorry for denying you a chance of being a father. I'm sorry I lied to you and never allowed you to be involved with my son as he grew to the genin you met. I'm thankful you made our son the man he is today, and I'm happy that Sarutobi sensei overruled me and made you his teacher." Because of you he became Hokage and a loving husband and father. Tsunade wasn't crying, but you could tell that she was sorry and angry, more than likely at the village right now for what he was just told. She looked up into Jiraiya's eyes, a look of shame and begging for forgiveness upon her face, but no tears, just a slight glistening in her eyes. I know I have a lot to make up for and much to share with you, but please don't kick me out of the family because I wronged you. Please, please, I will do anything to make it up to you and Minato. I want to be there for our son, our daughter-in-law, and for our grandson. Hearing everything you have just done for our grandson and what you are still doing even at this late hour, I know now you would have been a great father, and I really and truly am sorry. She stood in front of Jiraiya looking more than ready to do whatever it takes to make it up to him. He was tempted to tell her to give him a blowjob, but that just might ruin the moment, and he was pretty sure she would right there in the hallway. He stood there for a few moments wondering what he should do. Maybe for now a lady's idea on kid clothes and stuff would help. He would foot the bill though, because he knew she was broke. He would be making her fix that once things calmed down later and they could really sit and talk. I'll tell you what, I need to finish in here and then go shopping. You are better at kids stuff than me because of Shizune. You will check over Naruto's health as well before we go though, and I will get an Anbu or make a clone watch over Naruto while we go shopping. Then you are gonna go on a date with me, later when things settle a bit, to a restaurant with a private booth, and we will talk everything over dinner. Agreed? Asked Jiraiya, looking her right in the eyes with a serious look on his face. Tsunade hesitated but then agreed that was more reasonable than what it should have been in her opinion. Jiraiya opened the door and allowed her in. He then led her to the bedroom, warning her not to sit on the bed. She told him to pick Naruto up and then tested the bed herself, and then ordered Jiraiya to carry Naruto to her apartment. She knew hers was better than this bed frame and mattress, which was nothing but springs with no padding whatsoever. She couldn't blame Jiraiya for not noticing. He was more worried about Naruto getting his sleep and then cleaning. He hadn't noticed the mattress. Naruto won't like waking in a strange place. I'll grab the one from my apartment and move it in here. In the meantime, I'll set up my sleeping bag for you to look him over on. Man, this kid could sleep through a war and not wake. Jiraiya placed Naruto back down and pulled out a scroll with his gear. He made note to have Minato or Kushina break this habit. He unrolled it and went to the seal with his desired item, then applied chakra to make it pop out of the seal. He then walked to the side away from the bed and not where he would have to work around Naruto, then placed it down. He moved Naruto there and pulled out a blank scroll and started making a new seal. Check out his couch. If it's not usable, check the cushions and chair for lost items, and then I'll seal that away too. Then we can let Minato or Kushina burn it tomorrow. Chuckles should help them blow off some steam. After all, we will have to talk about with them epically. Kushina with that hot temper of hers. Jiraiya says, remembering the days when people used to call her a tomato and pay the price for it. Tsunade nodded and went to the living room while Jiraiya cleared out under the bed. There he found an odd box with a drawing on it. It was of three people: a tall female with a dress, yellow hair and brown eyes, then a man with brown hair and blue eyes, and a small blonde with blue eyes, all smiling. The two parent-looking figures had their hands on each shoulder after having crossed over to the other side from which they stood on. Jiraiya smiled and opened the box to see many different cards within. None had any writing on it other than the date printed on the back of each. 4 years worth, and after looking them over and sorting them, he got an idea after looking the over. One had a male with a cake and candles on it 4 times on a specific day, and same for the female. Then there were 4 with both male and female standing together, and what might have been bells in the picture and doves. If Jiraiya had to guess, 4 of Minato's birthday cards, 4 Kushina birthday cards, and 4 wedding anniversary cards. Though the date of the events were wrong, but they were always the same month and day every year, so Naruto must have made the dates up himself. Looking further, there was even Valentine's Day cards, Father's Day cards, and Mother's Day cards within. He put them back carefully. He would ask Tsunade if they should tell Minato and Kushina about this or just let them be surprised about it if Naruto showed them it. By this time Tsunade came in with a trash bag and told him the couch was in just as bad shape, then started to throw out the pile of clothes that were no good. Jiraiya showed her the box after getting her attention. She sat next to Jiraiya and leaned into him. Jiraiya could tell she was close to tears now. She was wiping at her eyes as she kept looking through the cards. She asked why there was no writing. Jiraiya had to explain that Naruto was unable to write or read and that tomorrow they would be testing him with a teacher Sarutobi was thinking about. She was quiet as she put the cards back carefully and replaced the lid back on the box, then moved it to the side. She sighed and went over to where her grandson was laying and ran her hand through his hair. He leaned subconsciously into her touch and sighed. Tsunade smiled sadly but then got a look of determination on her face. I'll get over my fear of blood and heal your mother, my little sunshine. They will be able to be with you and teach you and walk with you. They will see you grow and be there every step of the way from now on, I promise. She says softly to him, then starts running a diagnostic on him, frowning as she went from his head down to his toes. Many old fractures in arms, legs, and chest area, though one on his right arm was recent. The legs didn't heal correctly and are affecting his balance along with the old breaks on his toes and ankles. They will have to be rebroken and realigned in order to get him better. I'm kind of surprised he runs around like he does. Tsunade said with a light chuckle. She has heard stories from a few people she asked on her way home earlier. Then continued her mental notes aloud but softly enough so not to wake Naruto. His ribs are okay, but I will make reinforce the old break damaged and healed it better. It appears as though they healed with no help from any medics. Typical boys rough housing and getting hurt but not going to a medic unless they are dragged there half dead. His head and spine are good but his weight is very poor, though I think the QB is helping with that. There are signs of the nutrients being efficiently moved to where it is needed. We should up his food intake for a bit and limit his physical activity to light workouts. We want weight but not loss of muscle tone. Then once he's near the weight he should be, we can reduce the amount of food a bit but return his workout to normal standard. She said as she lifted his shirt and started doing an organ read to ensure everything was working there. She frowned a bit. There seemed to be bruising from earlier today. She wondered why. She would need to speak to Sarutobi and see if he had any idea of anything having happened to Naruto. Most of it was healing fine, she just had to heal his kidney a bit to make Naruto more comfortable since that was still the most bruised. She had just gotten done healing his kidney when Naruto jolted up, shocking her and almost hitting her head. Oh, sorry Nico, sunshine, did I wake you? She asked, trying not to startle the boy. Naruto just got up and went past her and out the door. She followed him and realized that he wasn't even fully awake enough to recognize she was there. She chuckled and so did Jiraiya, who had just finished sealing the bed and couch and was watching Naruto as well. Jiraiya would stay until Naruto was back asleep just so he didn't freak out. The sound of flushing was heard and then Naruto opened the door again. Wash your hands, young man, said Tsunade, pointing to the door he just left. He obediently did as was told and went back to wash his hands, then came back out to go to where his bed used to be, then mumbled to himself and laid down on the hard floor, where his bed used to be, with no fuss or worries. At this both Jiraiya and Tsunade laughed full out this time. It was so funny for this to happen and the kid really didn't notice anything at all. Jiraiya finished laughing and shook his head, then went and moved Naruto back into the sleeping bag, with Tsunade's help, by opening the bag. Naruto huddled down in the warm bag and rolled over to his side. How about buying him a new bed tonight and all the other things he needs now instead of bringing the bed from another apartment? I hear he likes orange. We can buy things he likes and make his day tomorrow. I'll leave some Cage Bunchy behind to watch him so we can go. The clones will finish cleaning here too, said Jiraiya as he made the hand seal for Cage Bunchy, and two appeared, and two started to clean and gather things. On his way out, Jiraiya left a non-duplicated scroll for the Cage Bunchy to use to store the broken kuni that they would turn in so they could be recycled later. They left and made sure to lock the door behind them. Naruto would be safe with the Cage Bunchy there. They would know if anything happened. They went into the shopping district and looked to see what stores were open and what store would soon open. It was just becoming daytime by the time they had spent cleaning and caring for their grandson's apartment. Hopefully they could get everything and be back before Naruto woke. They made a plan for Jiraiya or Tsunade to make a cage bunchi and send them with the furniture first, then go clothes shopping, and depending on the time they would either get Naruto and have breakfast, then get Ninja Academy gear, or get the gear and then have breakfast with Naruto. They found a store that had some items they could see that and they liked or thought that Naruto would like as well. They knocked on the door and waited while the store owner got up and opened the door. The owner, in pajama bottoms and a pale blue bathrobe, was in his 40s and starting to get grays in his brown hair. He had tired eyes until he saw who had knocked on his door at 6:15 a.m. in the morning. Lady Tsunade, Lord Jiraiya, how may this lowly store owner help you today? He said while bowing to them. We're in need of buying a poor child that has nothing, some furniture and some bedding that you have here. We're in a bit of a rush and need to get it set up so the poor child can rest and awake to a wonderful surprise, said Tsunade with Jiraiya nodding. The owner led them in, flicking the lights on and shutting the door behind them. He nodded and motioned for them to follow him to the children's section in the store. We have a brand new set that came in yesterday, only just set up for display last night after closing, you may be interested in. Is the child thinking of becoming a ninja by chance? If so, then he or she may like this set, said the owner, stopping at a bed set that was displayed. There was a fluffy square rug on the floor, a russet red-orange color put on an angle to look like a diamond. The bed frame, one bookshelf, 3 shelves, 1 nightstand and 1 dresser were a golden oak wood with a clear natural varnish, light-colored wood. On the ends of the shelves was the konoha leaf burnt into the wood ends, each a different length, with photo frames of silver set on for display along with other knickknacks. The bookcase had 2 bookends, both different from each other. One looked like a flame, another was a kuni. On the bottom half, there were slots for scrolls to set and organize them into categories, with space to place labels. The nightstand beside the bed had a lamp connected to an organizer that had slots for putting 2 leg pouches and on fanny pack in, along with place for a folded headband leaning up for display, was a blank fake one. The dresser had 6 drawers and wooden block knobs with the konoha leaf burnt into the flat surface. It had a will of fire, flame piggy bank on it on the back right, an oval white cloth on the center and a tray for items on top of that. A mirror was attached to the back and would stand tall enough that he would be well into his teens before he outgrew it. The nightstand had a drawer and an open cubby hole to place large things in for the display. It had a brown rectangle wicker basket with a soft cream cloth lining and a blue ribbon that looked stitched through and held it over the edge and tied into a bow. It had a teddy bear in it and some other prop toys for either gender. The bed was a basic frame with a high headboard and a large konoha leaf burnt into the center and painted in red and kanji for the will of fire, above that also burnt into the headboard. The underside of the bed had 2 drawers on each side of the bed with similar knobs as the dresser. Above that was a cloth scroll with a ninja looking like he was jumping from a branch and his kuni drawn out in a deflecting move, and 2 throwing stars looking like they had just been deflected. In the background, a rocky wall behind him. Jiraiya liked it and looked at Tsunade. She nodded her head in approval. She liked it too. Yes, this will do, and if we can, I would like to buy some of the display props if you have them. Is it pre-assembled or needs assembly? She asked, running her hands over the dresser and looking at a few items she wanted with this set to come with them today. This bed requires assembly, but the rest is already done, and as far as the props, we do sell them. Let me get an order form and we can start marking down what you would like and then gather things. I will have my son start gathering things up on the items you would like and making a charge slip. Did you have the Rio now or want a bank slip drawn up? The owner asked, looking at them as they checked out the set. He went over to the nearest sales desk and grabbed an order form and bank slip along with 2 clipboards, 1 for each, and went to each piece of furniture, getting the UPN off the tags and then letting them point out different items they saw in the display they wanted and getting the UPN codes for them as well. Bank slip please, and if you could let my cage bunchi start assembling the bed so it can be sealed up and ready to be up in the room for the kid, that would be great. Now mattresses, I believe this is a twin bed. I would like one of your softest beds. What do you recommend? Asked Jiraiya, looking at the owner as Tsunade held up one of the book ends for the needed information of the item, then moving to the other. The owner nodded and excused himself for a moment while he got his son to come and help him with this order. Jiraiya made a cage bunchi so that he could send it with the son once owner and son came back. He handed the clone another scroll to seal stuff in. Seals already done, just needed items. There were at least 20 seals for large objects in it now. The owner and son came back. The son was a teen around 17 or 18 years old and didn't look happy about being awoken so early in the morning no matter who it was. Jiraiya sent the clone with the son who was instructed by the father which said and where it was located in the back. The boy nodded and took the keys his father held out, then walked off, not even bothering looking back to see if the clone was following, which he was. Sorry about that, he has been doing extra studies in order to take over the business and was up late studying for a test. I found him asleep on his desk. The owner stated with pride. It's okay, normally teens don't like being woken early anyway, so it's to be expected, said Tsunade with a chuckle, thinking of her apprentice. Okay, let's go over the mattresses and bedding, then have them taken to the back and set the bed up so the child you are helping can enjoy it at once, said the owner, clapping his hands together and picking the paperwork back up. He then held out the bank slip clipboard and waited for one of them to take it. Jiraiya stepped forward and took the clipboard. Jiraiya started filling out the paperwork as Tsunade helped the owner get last of the UPN codes for the items they were to get from the display. By the time he finished, they finished as well. They walked to one side with many mattresses and went to the twin bed size and waited for the owner to show them which one he recommended. This one here is a full memory foam bed. It is soft but supportive. Great after a long day training or doing missions. We also have pillows that are gel memory foam and go great with this. What do you think? Asked the owner, letting them touch the bed through the protective cover. He leaned it against the wall and went to grab the mentioned pillows, too, and let them see them as well. Yes, this will do great. I might even get a set for myself later, and of course at a normal business time. Now bedding, and I would like to look at other items you have for a bedroom in case there was something we think would go nicely for the child, Tsunade said after getting Jiraiya's approvals as well. The owner nodded and left the items together against the wall to be picked up on the way back after getting the bedding. They went down a bit to the corner with many beddings being displayed. They went right over to the orange colors and looked around. They found one sloyd orange with black trimming in the shape of flames at the footing, think Minato's cloak in bedding form. They found one and all the sheets and 2 pillowcases that went with it. They went and grabbed a heavier blanket since fall was around the corner and it would be getting cooler soon. They made their way to where more bedroom decor was and only found a toad lamp shade to replace the lamp shade for the nightstand organizer. And a cork board of 15 by 18 inches one so Naruto would have something to put notes and drawings. Other than that, nothing else stuck out. They place all the items in the center of the seal and sealed them up to the could go after making sure they all matched the UPN codes they were looking for. They went back to where the son and Jiraiya clone was grabbing the bedding and other items. Jiraiya grabbed the bed, insisting it was a gentleman thing to do, and would hear nothing more from Tsunade when she started to fuss saying she could get the pillows. They took them to the back room and say the frame was done and the clone was just finishing sealing the other furniture. They quickly put the bed on the frame and Tsunade started making the bed up, placing the heavier blanket folded up at the end of the bed. While Jiraiya finished the paperwork for the payment and the owner totaled up the full cost. The clone stood to the side knowing he would be taking the items to Naruto's apartment and unsealing them. Once Tsunade was done, the clone sealed the bed into its own seal, then tucked it away, waiting for the okay to go. Okay, here is your total, Lord Jiraiya. I added a discount since you are helping a poor child in need, said the owner, showing the amount for Jiraiya. Jiraiya looked over the form and then lowered it to look at the owner. This is either quite the discount or something is missing from your calculations. Like all the decoration items worth to be exact, is there a reason why? Asked Jiraiya, looking at the now kind of shy owner. The owner had a small smile on his face but shook his head. No, that stuff is all on me, and I'll tell you why. Earlier this evening you walked by while holding a special blonde-haired boy, did you not? Jiraiya eyed him oddly but nodded. Well, if I had to guess, then this stuff is all for that child, Naruto. I owe him for helping me about 2 months ago. You see, one day I had a chunin in my shop and he was demanding stuff for free, and then he hit my wife when she told him that we couldn't do that. Things were starting to get out of hand when all of a sudden, the sound of firecrackers going off, and then the chunin started yelling and dancing around. It was then I saw Naruto behind the chunin laughing, and then an Anbu came running in, grabbed Naruto only to stop and ask what was going on in here. Said the owner, smiling at the memory, then continued the story. From what it came down to in the end was Naruto had done a prank earlier and the Anbu was looking for him and found him when the firecrackers went off. We told the Anbu what happened and he put Naruto down, then grabbed the chunin, arresting him and apologizing to us for the chunin's actions and that the Hokage will be in touch with us. Naruto had run off already when I turned to thank the kids, so I'll consider this my thanks, though I can't give everything away. He said proudly at the end of his story, very sure his guess was correct. Jiraiya smiled and shook his head. Tsunade had heard the story as well and was smiling as well. You sure you're not a ninja yourself? Yes, this is for him. We saw how bad his old stuff was and wanted to make the kid's life better since he has very little. Thank you for being kind to the poor kid. Jiraiya laughed with the owner, knowing for a fact the owner wasn't a ninja, having known him for years now. Just very perceptive, makes a good salesperson, being able to figure out the customer with just a glance. There are a few other store owners near here that owe that boy and feel the same as me, but I should let you know we haven't been open about allowing him into the council. They have been campaigning against any store that tries to help the kid. The only one that hasn't fallen by their hand yet is the Hokage, going to that shop a lot, and that one is Ichiraku Ramen. The owner leaned in nervously and started speaking fast in fear. He kept looking around like there might be someone listening in. Jiraiya did a quick sensor check and found no one other than those here. There have been at least 10 shops that were forced closed by the council for letting the boy in, and the few that were okayed for letting him in, like the one small grocer shop, as long as they charged a demon tax. The few who tried not charging it were one of the few forced closed not long after. If you could see if the Hokage can do anything about this, that would be great. I just didn't want the council seeing me go to the Hokage and then get my shop closed. It's all my family has. He kept looking around for a few moments more before looking at Jiraiya, who made a gesture of everything being okay and to calm down. The son was leaning against the wall but looked approving about the events going on. Apparently, the kid agreed with his father. Jiraiya sighed and motioned the clone to go with the scroll and set everything up as planned while he stayed and finished here. It would seem he would have to have a look around and let Minato and Sarutobi-sensei know about this. If you think they will help us jot down the names of the stores and who we are okay to speak to, if you could, I promise none of these names will be seen by anyone but me, Tsunade, and the Sandame. Said Jiraiya as he pulled out his notebook and took a page out, handing it to the owner. It took only a few minutes, but the list was small: 2 clothes shops, 1 grocer, and 1 toy store. They were in the same block as this shop, so it wouldn't be much to get to them, but the only one they were going to before heading back to Naruto's apartment was one of the clothiers. The only one that had a kids section for ninjas, along with academy gear, was 5 stores down and on the opposite side and should be open right now. That was where they would be heading next. They thanked the owner and his son for their help and went on their way. They left through the front door and the owner bowed to them as they left and locked the door behind, then turned off the lights. Tsunade and Jiraiya walked to their next destination in silence, both thinking of what they just learned and were making a list of what they wanted to do to some people. For Tsunade, that meant that she would have to reclaim her seat on the council, and she really had no interest in that. But it appears her grandson would need her there, and for her to stay until she was no longer needed. Honestly, Minato and Naruto were the only reason she didn't leave once the meeting was done. She liked Kushina, but in her honest opinion neither her nor any other women she could think of would ever be good enough for her son, but that might just be her. Though she did want to thank her for the adorable grandson with chubby little cheeks she just wanted to pinch. Oh, he'll be a heartthrob when he gets older. She isn't afraid to admit that on more than one occasion she drove off fangirls from the hospital and sometime from stalking her son. Though all anyone thought was that she was there because her teammate was the one who was training him, but really even when Minato was in the orphanage and academy she would make sure she and only she was his doctor. Even now she wanted to kick Jiro out and take over treatment for Minato, but at first, she was a bit disoriented after the confrontation and revelation of the day. If it wasn't for Jiraiya making noise next door and showing her Naruto, she would have gone to Minato and taken over the medical room set up for Minato and his wife. She would have to share her time between her two precious baby boys. Yes, Minato will always be her baby no matter what, and now that she didn't have to hide it, she was gonna spoil him and Naruto rotten, though she would have to share with Jiraiya. This next thing they were about to do would be something she always wanted to do for Minato though couldn't due to hiding his heritage. She wasn't sure if she wanted to tell the whole village she still believed being a known Senju was gonna have the rest of her family killed off. One way or another in her family was either Kia or mysteriously died in either a freak accident or mysterious illness, and how Minato supposedly died was the only noted one to be a normal circumstance. It was one of the reasons she stayed on the move for so long. Something or someone was targeting her family and killing them off one by one. Thoughts like this would have to wait, for now the store they wanted was just opening its door, which was nice since they didn't have to wake anyone. It was now 7:28 a.m., meaning they had been in the furniture store for only a bit over an hour, which was nice. They went into the store just as a man unlocked the door and returned to the counter. He had yet to look up and see who entered though the bell rang. Welcome to Hidden Shadows. We have everything for your shinobi needs, whether it's academy to cage needs. How can I help you today? Asked the worker, still not looking, as he grabbed a box of shirts and started folding them and sorting them by size. We were told to speak to Asato Daichi, the owner of this establishment. Is he in? Asked Jiraiya, coming to the counter and looking at the worker. Tsunade was already heading to the kids section of the store since their time was short and they wanted to see Naruto's face when they got back. The worker stopped and looked up and then froze when he saw who was in the store. My apologies, Lord Jiraiya, I had not realized you were back in the village. He glanced at the other person in the building and panicked. Lady Tsunade, you're here as well. He rushed around the counter and bowed deeply and apologized another 3 times. I am the one you are looking for, Sato Daichi, the owner of this establishment. How can I be of service? He asked, still bowing, waiting for their orders. Jiraiya just shook his head and pulled out the receipt from the store they had just left. The last place we left suggested you, said something about you and a special blonde-haired, whiskered boy that we are shopping for. Jiraiya said, making the owner look up and look at the receipt. He then went to the door and flipped the sign to closed and locked the door. Are we speaking of Naruto? Daichi asked, looking between the two in his store. Jiraiya nodded and leaned against the counter while Tsunade came and placed a few daytime outfits on the counter, then went to the shoes, found 2 pairs of sandals. They followed the day clothes and then she went back again with almost a dance to her step. Jiraiya and Daichi got to talking, while Jiraiya was filling out another bank form while the shopkeeper started writing down the item and price on a manual receipt, then bagged everything. After a half hour of clothes shopping, there were a total of 25 shirts, 20 pants, 20 boxers, 20 briefs, 2 dozen socks non-slip, 2 pairs of sandals blue and black, 1 orange scarf, 1 tan wool-lined coat, 1 light jacket black with orange strips, 1 pair of black gloves, 5 towels with wash clothes, and 1 set of formal funeral clothes. Boy, Tsunade miss anything. I was hoping to actually let him enjoy of shopping with a female at some point, but you seem to have him covered for the year. Jiraiya said, hinting at leaving some for Kushina so she could have some time with Naruto, maybe even drag Minato along for the family bonding. The list was almost set when Jiraiya noticed there was no night clothes were on the list. He got up as Tsunade helped the Daichi fold and neatly pack all the clothes. Jiraiya went to the kids section and looked around. He found 5 pairs of pajama pants with tops. One even had a toad fishing in the moonlight on the shirt. As he was leaving the section with his selection, he noticed a nightcap, goofy looking thing. It looked like a dark gray Santa hat with an oval black nose half on the white trim and 2 white buck teeth that came out the bottom of the white trim. Jiraiya chuckled and put it with his collection of clothing, then continued to the counter, placing the items in front of the owner to be added. Again, They were given a large discount for all items and were asked to pass along the owner's thanks to Naruto for helping him. How was never explained. The owner went to the front and unlocked the door after making sure that they had everything they would need. He bowed as they left and then shut the door after them. It was now 8 a.m. and they really needed to get back. Naruto would either be away now or would be awake soon, though Jiraiya said none of his clones popped to tell him the kid was awake yet. They walked to the apartment building and went up the stairs to their floor. They entered Naruto's apartment after a clone let them in after they knocked lightly, then dispersed the clones in the apartment. Luck was on their side and Naruto had yet to wake and they hopefully could get everything set up in the dresser. As they were finishing, Jiraiya found the nightcap and smiles. He walked over to Naruto. Gently he put it on Naruto's head, then thought for a moment and grabbed a new pajama set. He changed Naruto out of his old oversized set and put a button-up shirt pajama set on the small kid. Tucking him back into bed, he took the old pajamas. Looking them over, he would have someone repair them, maybe Kushina or a tailor. Jiraiya went to the apartment next door and grabbed the couch there since it was in better condition and moved it over to Naruto's apartment, even the kitchen table and chairs since they were in better shape than the one Naruto had. Making one clone, getting a bit whined for his efforts. 5 was his limit. He moved the furniture in manually and carted the original table from Naruto's apartment. Tsunade had left saying something about needing some soap, shampoo, toothpaste, toothbrush, a comb, and cleaning supplies needed, also asking what Jiraiya wanted for breakfast. Jiraiya hopped to have everything set up and ready for her return. He whipped down kitchen again just to be safe and burn time, then he sat on the couch. Jiraiya didn't know when, but he fell asleep on the couch and now Naruto was looking up at him while having a death grip of a hug on him. The kid had a smile so bright and wide it almost popped off his face. No matter how tired Jiraiya was at this moment, it was well worth it no matter what. Hey kiddo, you sleep well? Jiraiya said, patting the nightcap as Naruto buried his head in his side again as he nodded. Jiraiya brought his arm around the small form and pulled Naruto tighter to his side, returning the hug. He glanced at the time and saw it was now 9:45 a.m. Tsunade should be back any time now. Naruto should get cleaned up and ready for the day. Both he and Naruto would be reporting to the Hokage's tower at noon for an evaluation of what Naruto would need to get caught up on. As if on cue, Tsunade came into the apartment with a couple of cloth bags filled to the brim and walked hurriedly to the kitchen table and put them down. She pulled out 24 eggs and a gallon of milk along with some more food. Apparently, they were go with a banquet breakfast. She had yet to notice them on the couch watching her. 4 iron skillet pans came out and were placed on the stove. She turned the knobs and waited, but nothing happened. She started messing with the oven for a few minutes and started to mumble angrily to herself. Naruto watched her wearily since the moment she stepped into the apartment, then saw her getting upset with his stove. He got up and went behind her, then grabbed the bottom of her shirt near her butt, making her jump. She grabbed one of the frying pans and turned around with a swing that would have hit Jiraiya had he been standing there upside the head. Jiraiya. She growled lowly, then froze as she hit nothing and looked down at the large blue eyes wide with shock and a bit of fear as the boy gulped, still holding her shirt end. Quickly she put the pan back and grabbed Naruto up in a hug and apologized for almost hitting him. Naruto, Nico, please don't grab me there. It's not nice to grab a woman's butt. But I guess you were going for my shirt edge, not my backside, weren't you? Naruto nodded. Well, what did you need, Nico? Did you just get up? She asked, looking him over. Well, I noticed you were trying to get my stove to work, but you need to turn the gas on from the tank under the sink. I had to rig it up when the gas was turned off due to the leaks in all the other apartments that are in poor condition. It was a hazard, so they shut it off until the landlord can repair it, but since I'm the only one living here, there is no money to repair it with. Said Naruto, looking down, not sure if he would be in trouble or not with this nice lady. He went to the sink and kneeled down. After opening the covert door, he crawled in and did something, then backed out and shut the door. A moment later, the smell of propane gas could be smelt. Naruto opened another drawer and pulled out matches, then came over with them, taking one out of the box. Before he could strike the match, Tsunade took it from his hand. She turned to the stove and adjusted the dials and then lit the match. After lighting the 4 burners, she readjusted the pans, then turned to Naruto. Why don't you jump in the shower with the stuff I bought you and get ready for the day, then when you are done you can come help me with cooking. Tsunade said, taking more items from one of the bags and handing them to Naruto with a small push to the bathroom door. Naruto nodded, looking at the items he was handed: a pack of 8 boxed soap bars, herbal shampoo, thankfully no fluorescent, a new toothbrush, toothpaste, and a hairbrush with a wooden handle. He smiled and nodded his head and ran to the bathroom. He came out moments later and ran for his room. Wait, where's my clothes? Naruto yelled out. Jiraiya got up and went to the bedroom. A few mumbles and drawers being opened and shut were heard before more running, and a blonde head darted out and back into the bathroom. Jiraiya followed to help the kid for another few moments. He wanted to check the water since the gas was turned off. He wondered about hot water. Tsunade chuckled watching the two, but then her face turned sad as the thought hit her. Jiraiya really would have made a great father. Just watching him with Naruto proved that. She started making the batter for pancakes after she had just set the bacon in to cook. She continued working until she heard the bathroom door shut, and then moments later large arms wrapped tightly around her waist and Jiraiya's head came over his shoulder. She debated whether she should hit him or not. At first, she tensed but then slowly loosened up as she worked and he did nothing more. He spoke after a bit when she switched out the bacon. She would have to work on looking before hitting, might as well start now. We're gonna have to go to a public bathhouse for a while. That water was cold until he turned on another propane tank and I lit it with the campfire jutsu. Not only that, but the water smelled off. I took a sample of it and I need you to test it. You didn't use any for the food, did you? He asked. Now she knew why he hugged her. He was mad and knew he couldn't do anything yet about anything. No, I used milk for the batter and scrambled eggs instead of water. I'll run the test after we eat and get back to you when I know what's going on. You're gonna be with sensei for a bit, right? She asked. Plated more eggs, then flipped another pancake, then took the vial from Jiraiya, tucking it away. Jiraiya nodded, then backed up and went through the bags. He pulled out a bag of raspberries and ripped small holes in the bottom of the bag. He then pulled a canteen from a seal on his belt and walked to the sink and washed the fruit. They worked in silence for a while before Naruto came out from the bathroom rubbing a towel through his hair. He tossed it on the couch only to have Tsunade correct him about making mold on the couch from leaving damp things on furniture or carpet floors, as she continued making the food. He ran back into the bathroom and hung it where he found it, then ran back out and right to his room. Jiraiya walked into the bathroom and grabbed the night clothes and started folding them, then followed the little blonde to his room wondering what he was doing. Naruto was going through every drawer, looking around in the bed drawers and dresser drawer, not yet having made it to the nightstand. What you looking for, kid? Asked Jiraiya after placing the folded pajamas on the end of the bed. Naruto paused for a moment, looking up and then back at the box with the cards in it. My toad wallet, I can't find it, he said, looking a bit sad. Jiraiya patted Naruto's head and went to the nightstand. His clone figured that this would be the best spot for the wallet since it was easy to get to. He opened the drawer and pulled out the wallet, tossing it to Naruto, who caught it with a smile. He got up and grabbed Jiraiya's large hand with his small one and tried to drag the man out of the room with him. Jiraiya let himself be pulled along and ended up in the kitchen watching Tsunade put the last of the plates on the table. Naruto moved Jiraiya so he stood beside Tsunade before coming to stand in front of them. Naruto bowed his head and held his fat toad out towards them. Thank you so much, Datbeo. I love the new things you bought me, but this is all I have. Please take it and I'll work on getting you more or doing extra work for you or something, said Naruto, holding the wallet higher and lowering his head, almost falling over due to poor balance. Jiraiya and Tsunade looked at each other and nodded. They had spoken about this, thinking that this might happen when he got up, and came to an agreement on how to handle it as they went out to shop for him. They both walked up and kneeled by him, getting him out of his bow and making it a three-way hug. At first Naruto didn't know how to react, but then he brought his arms around their sides to their backs and returned the hug. He would bury his head in one of their sides to the other one's side every few minutes. Jiraiya and Tsunade backed up but still kept an arm around his back as they balanced on the balls of their feet. Naruto, the only thing we ask is for you to keep your apartment clean and care for yourself and your things. We have heard about you from our sensei the Sandaime Hokage, and you know he can't give you all he wishes he could give you. So, we decided to step in after seeing what was going on. You do know why the Sandaime can't give you extra attention, correct? Asked Jiraiya, looking into Naruto's eyes, and waited for Naruto to answer. He never said why, but if I had to guess, it's because if someone thought that I was of value to him, they could take me or hurt me to hurt him, right? Said Naruto, looking at Jiraiya then looking down. He knew that no matter what, the old man he considered a grandfather figure couldn't ever really take him in, but at least he can have a friend of sorts in the old man. The old man had his own family, and Gigi considered the village as a whole as family as well, so he could just spend his time on one kid and ignore the others. It would be like in the orphanage all over again. Naruto knew that the old man's first son died, and not long after his daughter-in-law died in childbirth, about 2 years ago, though Naruto has only seen a picture of Gigi's grandson. His other son is with the daimyo guarding him or something. All Naruto knew was that they weren't on the best of terms. Jiraiya nodded to himself. The kid really was perceptive, but he wondered why no one but maybe Hiruzen knew about this trait. In some of the letters he had received in reports of the boy, there were so small hints that Naruto was smart and perceptive. But nothing outright said about it, mostly about Naruto's well-planned and thought-out pranks. Naruto just didn't know politics yet, so he was missing a bit of the why, but that explanation would work for now. Well, kid, you're right about that, but it's a bit more complicated. Naruto was about to ask, but Jiraiya put a finger to Naruto's lips. I can't explain it now, but sometime soon hopefully you will be told the full political point of view. Naruto looked a bit angry but nodded. He was used to people avoiding stuff with him, but at least this guy was being honest with him, so that was a point for him. Jiraiya and Tsunade hugged Naruto again, and he returned the hug happily. They stayed like that for a bit before Tsunade pulled back. She patted Naruto's head while Jiraiya let go and stood up. They then made their way to the table and started eating breakfast while discussing what the plans were going to be for the day. Naruto was to go to the Hokage Tower at noon and take a test to see where he would need to caught up. Jiraiya would stay for a bit but had errands to do, and so did Tsunade for the hospital. Both would be busy for a while after even Naruto would be done with his testing. They would make arrangements for one of the Anbu to train Naruto a bit in throwing, and the katas for the academy, preferably either Bear or Inu, would be suggested. Speaking of Inu, they needed him to come out to Naruto without his Anbu uniform sometime soon. Minato wanted to have Naruto familiar with Kakashi and hopefully either consider Kakashi as either a brother or uncle. Maybe even have Might Guy come and work with Naruto a bit, since Kakashi and him were friends of sorts, even though Kakashi wouldn't admit it out loud yet. But since they had an hour and a half hours before Naruto needed to be in the tower, Jiraiya wanted to get the little ball of energy tired out a bit, so he could sit still long enough to take a few tests at least. Tsunade wasn't all that happy about it, since they wanted to keep Naruto's physical activates down to a minimum, but with the promise to eat some fruit that she got an agreement out of Naruto for. They parted ways. Jiraiya and Naruto to run the forest outside the walls, and Tsunade to buy some fruit, apples, pears, peaches, watermelon, grapes, blueberries, raspberries and strawberries with some whipped cream to go with it, and a few bottles of chilled water for Naruto to snack on while he does his test. She would be waiting for them in the Hokage's office. Also in the agreement was that he was to stop for a healthy lunch on top of that. She made a point to say how this will make him grow so he wouldn't be so short. That seemed to be the key into getting him to agree to the healthy foods argument. Noon came fast, and within the Hokage's office stood Hiruzen. In front of his desk to his side was a man that was the secretary seen yesterday, and he seemed to be hiding from Tsunade a bit behind the Hokage. Tsunade had a large bowl of fruit and a lunch bento box. She was giving instructions to the teacher to allow Naruto to eat, and she was giving him a bit of a glare while sizing the man up. Jiraiya came in a few minutes after noon carrying a panting Naruto on his back. The poor kid was so covered in sweat that he looked like he just ran through a light rain and was a bit smelly when close up. Tsunade swatted Jiraiya upside his head and pried Naruto off his back in one motion. She carried Naruto to the bathroom connected to the office. A few minutes later she came out with a shirtless Naruto still whipping his neck and face with a washcloth she had found in there. At this point, Naruto had caught his breath and was laughing at the odd touches that tickled. Once Naruto noticed the Hokage and jumped down from the Tsunade's arms and ran for the Hokage and giving him a hug on the leg, a hand coming down to tussle Naruto's hair. Naruto started speaking fast, telling the Hokage all about his new clothes and bedroom stuff he had this morning. The Hokage nodded his head and smiled before gently grabbing Naruto's attention. Naruto-kun, I know you are excited about your new things, but I would like to start the testing now. The Hokage placed his unoccupied hand, one was still on Naruto's head, and held the Chunin's shoulder that stood beside him. This is Yumino Iruka and he is working on his teacher's certificate. This will count towards his credits, so this will help both of you. Now I have a table set up over in the corner, and Naruto, you must tell Iruka-kun if you need help or don't know something. I already told him you started learning to read yesterday, so that is covered," said Sarutobi, leading them to the table that was set to face the Hokage and have student and teacher sit together. It had taken 3 hours last night just to talk Iruka into trying to testing Naruto, but Hiruzen was sure that Iruka could overcome the pain in his heart and put his student first. Hiruzen set them up with the large packet of tests from civilian preschool to the civilian 4th grade and the current test for the first year academy, to the point that the current class was in the curriculum. He had all of Naruto's previous scores from the academy, but the private tutor's stuff was only notes of how Naruto did in the lesson. Most stated that the boy would rather do anything but learn, or he just wouldn't do the work. Looking at Naruto working with Iruka for over an hour while eating the lunch Tsunade had for him as he worked showed the reports to be wrong. At this point he put his shirt back on. Hiruzen had a sometime before his next appointment, so he would ask Naruto directly and get all the facts for the case. Hiruzen got up from his desk and approached the two. Pardon me for a moment, Iruka-kun, I would like to ask Naruto-kun something for a moment, Hiruzen said, interrupting Iruka for a few moments. Iruka nodded and Naruto turned his attention to the Hokage. Naruto-kun, I was looking over old reports from your tutors and they said you didn't like doing your studies, but I see you here and enjoying your time with Iruka. Can you explain why? Hiruzen asked, looking Naruto right in the eye, and waited for a response. Well, Iruka-sensei, let me ask questions and I know the answers are real ones since you're sitting there and haven't corrected or interrupted us. Also, he is showing me how to fix my problem instead of yelling at me for being an idiot, and just taking away my paper and marking it with an F. I like Iruka-sensei. Can he be my teacher in the academy? Gigi, please? Asked Naruto with the biggest puppy eye no jutsu Hiruzen has ever seen, and he has seen many from his old teammate Kaharu to little Konohamaru and many other people trying to get something from a Hokage. Though Naruto's was the hardest to resist, thought that might be because of guilt. Hiruzen saw the look of anger and frustration in Naruto's eyes and face as he spoke about the events with the tutors he had. Hiruzen sighed to himself, thinking of yet another failure he had committed to an innocent child, worse yet one he had promised to take care of for another. He had the teachers taken to Ibiki last night while he was talking to Naruto and Jiraiya in the restaurant, and all their account records seized moments after their arrest. So far there have been records showing them receiving payments from him, the Hokage, and another benefactor that is unlabeled, and they are still receiving money from this benefactor today in small, almost unnoticeable amounts. Hiruzen went down and spoke with them, each asking who this benefactor may be. They claimed it was a trade market money they were receiving, but none of the files on approved market traders matched any the one that was coming into their banks. The names were close to real ones with only minor misspells that if you didn't pay attention to the little things it would escape notice for an average civilian that was just trying to get through their day. Ever since Minato brought things to his attention along with what his clones had found, Hiruzen has been looking carefully at everything that comes across his desk and had 2 clones in the back working on rewriting laws. He wanted to have everything ready for when the daimyo came, could help enforce it without the need of a council vote so the problems wouldn't crop up. To rewrite a law needed a vote from the council except when the daimyo ordered it to be rewritten since he was the ruling power of the land while a kage was only a military power of the land for the daimyo. Things would be put back in order before Minato got back in full power. The plan was for Minato to work his way back into the system. Minato even wanted to run a few missions and get back to physical standard before retaking the seat as Hokage, which was a really good thing. The projected time frame was 5 to 6 months barring anything cropping up, but Minato would also work in the office for a few hours every day, after spending 1 to 2 weeks with Naruto once they get reunited. Minato was worried that Naruto would get very clingy to him and have a hard time once he went back to work. He wanted to get Inoichi's opinion on what him and Kushina may have to face when they reunited and what behavior they would have to pay attention to. Just to make sure Naruto becomes a healthy young adult as far as most ninja is concerned. Minato had a list of book topics he wanted and Kakashi was getting them earlier this morning. Minato and Kushina should have them now on top of having all the news files too caught up on the ongoings of the village, other lands and nations. Minato wanted the heads up in order to make sure nothing could come after the village or his family once they were back out in the open. Paranoid, yes, but sometimes it was a good thing to be paranoid as long as it didn't lead to an early death. But Hiruzen had spoken to Minato about it, and with help from him Minato should live a health ninja level of paranoia. Hiruzen wanted to die with a little guilt as possible when his time came, and making sure this family was back and happy would take a large portion of guilt off his shoulders. Then maybe he could look at figuring out where he and Asuma fell apart. It would be another thing to look at, one thing at a time for now. Hiruzen motioned them to continue where they left off after promising Naruto that he would consider Iruka as a teacher for his class. He went back to his desk making notes on the case against the two tutors. It just kept piling up. Even after working for years in the shadows and having to do things he didn't like, it still sickened him the worse when it was done to children, and to have one harmed, either physically or mentally, right under his nose made it worse. Had his suspicions on who the mysterious benefactor was and he wasn't happy. It seems there was no redemption for this one after all. Not when he was being backstabbed after he made a ruling, and there are hits into this same suspect, the same being who encouraged the civilian council to act out in the manner they have been. Before too long 3 hours had passed and the test was done. Iruka was writing down his report at the desk he was working with Naruto in. Naruto was now bored and fully energized after having sat for so long and was bouncing in his seat. Some food and sitting still seems to be too much for the poor active kid. He started asking Iruka all kinds of questions and the Chunin answered everything he could, but one question came up and Hiruzen almost swallowed his pipe. Why do the women have, and why do they say they are having a baby when they are fat? Asked Naruto while scratching his chin and looking at the ceiling in the most innocent voice Hiruzen and Iruka have ever heard. In the ceiling tile above Hiruzen he heard a snort being muffled and another one by the bookcase. Apparently Anbu were just as shocked by this random question, but it gets better. Naruto asked if eating too much food made babies and if he was gonna have one since he has been eating a lot recently. Naruto-kun fights a laugh. I will have someone explain that to you in a bit. Over a month from now you can ask those types of questions then. I'll even keep a list of them for you and hand them to you when you finally meet these people. Hiruzen says, mentally laughing at his perfect revenge on Minato for trying to get Tsunade and Jiraiya to pound him into the dirt. All is fair in love and war. Hiruzen wrote down the questions in the same wording Naruto asked them just for kicks, then stored the list away. Iruka helped him read and fixed his writing. Iruka changed the subject in order to avoid any further embarrassment. He discussed what Naruto needed to work on. Mostly it was reading and writing as the primary issue. Once that was covered he would just have to go over the old lessons on geography and history portion of school once Naruto caught up. Naruto's math was very good, though he kept muttering about ramen cups as he started each new math problem. Once Naruto was shown something and able to put his hands on it, he picked up the lesson easily. All in all, the expectance for Iruka was very good, and he must admit the Hokage was right. The kid was like any other child Iruka has been around. But he was very energetic, and from what he heard the Inuzuka clan children were very similar. Though he was worn out by exercise that Jiraiya made him do, it was time for another dose of it though. He would have to keep that in mind for active clans apparently, run them harder than the rest of the class would work the best it seems. Maybe get a morning obstacle course and a heavy workout right after lunch or at least a half hour after they have eaten. Maybe bring this up with the board and the Hokage in order to deal with the issues he has heard so much about. Most students that come from ninja families are more active and the current curriculum was way too much sitting, and for hands-on students, like Naruto, this would be easier on them. Iruka asked the Hokage if Naruto was still needed or if he could go and play or something. The Sandaime called out Inu to come and take Naruto out to a private field and show him throwing in taijutsu kata from the academy. Naruto jumped up and ran over to Inu, who had appeared after being summoned by the Hokage. Inu turned to the Hokage and handed him a scroll stating that this was from a neutral friend and Jiraiya, who had acted on the neutral friend's behalf, was hinted at. Inu then grabbed Naruto and carried him off like a bag of rice, with Naruto waving and a big cheesy smile on his face as they left in a sunshine. Hiruzen tucked the scroll away in his robes for now, since they had Iruka in the office and another appointment was coming in a few minutes. He would read it later when he had his quiet time and was sure no one was watching. Speaking of that, a tree root decided to welcome itself into the room. The root agent was hidden in the corner of the ceiling that should have been solid due to needing the heavy reinforcement needed to keep the office quiet and secure. Tora, come here for a moment, said Hiruzen. Waited for a moment before a male appeared from the floor, seeming to have transported through the wooden floor as Hiruzen wrote a note. Tora, please read and accomplish this task, please. Hiruzen said, not looking up from his desk, not giving away the task set for the new Anbu in the room. Tora read and made a seal, then blood started running down the wall behind Iruka after a muffled snap and splash was heard. Iruka turned around and freaked out for a moment before Hiruzen calmed him, saying it was a repair that was made after a large rodent made a hole in a once solid wall and ceiling. What he didn't tell Iruka was that the hole didn't just have a random jutsu in it but was regrown to no longer be hollow and now contained the crushed remains of a spy that should send a message to Danzo. He needed to get back to work, and so he did after dismissing Tora while thanking him. The other Anbu quickly cleaned the blood off the walls and floor before giving Iruka an invite back into his seat. So went the rest of the Sandaime's day until about 6 in the evening, when an Anbu from the wall appeared and announced that the daimyo and his entourage were within sight of the wall and approaching fast. It seems today would be another long one, though it was just about normal in such a large and growing still village. He did as Minato instructed and did not inform anyone of the daimyo coming. No need to warn our enemies of their impending doom now, is there? Minato told the Sandaime about what the letter mostly contained, along with a few things he said would have to wait until the daimyo came and could do something, hopefully. Until next time, have a great holiday and New Year. I will start working on Chapter 5 and will post when I can. Please leave a review, and just so you know, the next chapter will have Minato and Kushina back in the real world if the plan goes right. Tinka Prime.